So today we're going to focus on getting our character names, hit points and mana points drawn to the screen. That might not seem exciting, it might seem a bit superficial. I know you're probably hungry to get to the meat of our turn-based logic, but if we get this stuff out of the way now, 1, it looks really cool, and 2, we can, actually see our stuff is working a lot easier when we do write it. So do try and stick this out, I promise we'll get to the good stuff very soon. We are though going to start by generating the turn order and deciding what unit has the current turn. This is really easy and we're just going to set it up now so we can then highlight it in the UI. So first of all we're going to add some new variables to the OBattle object, namely turn equals 0, unit turn order equals a blank array, and unit render order equaling a blank array. Then underneath our existing code, after creating all the units for our encounter, we're going to put a shuffled copy of our units array into unit turn order. We do this with the brand new array shuffle function. This does what it says on the tin and returns the array you give it, with the order of arrays totally randomized. Take a moment to ensure you're on at least this version of GameMaker, as this is a relatively new function as of recording this episode. Now you might notice later that while this generates a random turn order, it generates the same random turn order each time. That's because we haven't yet included the randomize function anywhere in our game, which actually ensures we get a new internal random seed with each run. I forgot to do this when recording the visual steps for this episode. Feel free to add this to some sort of initialization script. You only ever need to call it once at the very start of your game, so you don't need or really want to put it in like OBattle's create event or anything like that. Just somewhere where it will run once and only once at the start of the game. A script resource will do this for you. Next we're going to make a function we can use to work out the render order of our units. Rather than relying on the depth values we set for each instance, we want OBattle to take control of drawing each unit so that it has the power to easily draw both in front and behind our units with relative ease. But to do that, we need to know what order to draw our units in, which is generally determined by their Y position on screen. The higher the Y position, the further down the screen, and therefore further forward, and later we want to draw the unit. So we'll make a variable or method variable called refresh render order and make it equal a function. In that function we're going to set unit render order to a blank array, which will clear it if necessary. Then we'll use array copy, copying into unit render order at index 0 from units at index 0 for the full length of the units array, using the array length. This might seem complicated to just duplicate an array, but you want to use this and not simply say unit render order equals units, as that will only copy the reference, making the two variables point at the same array in memory, whereas we want a new copy of the array. Once we have that, we can use array sort on unit render order and define a custom sort function to sort our array by the Y position of each unit. That looks something like this. The function needs two arguments that will represent each pair of array entries to be sorted, and if the function returns a negative number, the first entry goes first, and if it's a positive number, the second entry should go first. If it's a 0, we leave the entries as they are. So all we need to do is return the first unit's Y position minus the second unit's Y position. If unit 1 is at Y100 and unit 2 is at Y150, we'll get 100 minus 150, so negative 50. The negative number means unit 1 will go before unit 2 as it's higher up the screen. I hope that made sense. These new custom functions can be a little intimidating at first, but they're super powerful, so definitely try to learn how they work. It's easy to forget this whole function was designed as part of this array sort call, so finish the bracket and add the semicolon. When we're done, we can just call the function we just made, and if we ever add new units or remove units, we can call this again to get a new render order. Now, before we make any further use of this, let's stop our units from drawing themselves, otherwise it would be hard to tell if our new drawing method works. So let's pop to the battle unit object and add a draw event. Just having a draw event will override the default object drawing behavior, and we want to replace it with nothing. So I'm just going to leave a comment here that reads null. You can put whatever you want, this just lets us know that it's an intentionally blank event. Run the game just to be sure, and we can see there's no more units being drawn. Now we need to go to OBattle's draw event and, well, draw the units again, this time in depth order. We can get the unit that has the current turn by getting the ID of the instance at the turn entry of our unit turn order array. This will just be a random unit. We'll use this more than once in this event eventually, so I'm sticking it in a local var for now just to save writing this out again in the future. Then we do a for loop going over each unit in the render order array and then drawing them with draw self. Later down the line we'll also use the space to draw a visual turn indicator or pointer at the sprite itself, but I want to wait and only do this when we have a menu up and knowing whose turn it is becomes important. important. Anyway, if we run this now, we can see our units are drawing again. You might not be able to tell if, like me, your units aren't actually close enough to overlap, but take my word for it, if you've done this right, they'll be drawing in order of Y position, so units further down will draw in front. So now, with all that out of the way, we're going to draw our unit stats to the screen. Throughout this series, I'm going to be using a lot of magic numbers. I'm sure I talked about this in episode 1, but here and probably here alone, I will show you an example of how you can use macros to create constant values, which can be really useful for things like UI positions and stuff with a lot of annoying, reusable magic numbers. So here I just assign some values to constants that represent the X position of enemy list, player name list, HP list, and MP list. Then I'm going to set the font, H-align, V-align, and color I want to use. Then we're going to draw our headings using those X positions and a magic number Y position. Remember that we need to draw relative to where O battle is in the room. Your battle is not likely at 0, 0, so to get a screen position, you take the X or Y of O battle and add the relative screen position. We can run and see those lovely headings now. Then we'll draw a list of our enemies. There's not a lot of room for this in my particular UI setup, so I've gone for a particularly retro approach of just only drawing however many names I can fit. Again, I set up my font / color / alignment and then run a for loop over my enemy units array, but also adding a draw and draw limit counter, and adding that as a condition in the for loop so we never draw more than 3 names. Maybe optional for you if working with a higher resolution, or you have some other position or way of drawing these or whatever. So then for each character, if that character has any hit points, we want to draw its name to the list. I notice I've redundantly set H-align again here, not sure why, but it doesn't hurt anything. Anyway, if this character's ID matches the ID of the unit with the current turn, we set our color to yellow instead of white before drawing the name. We then draw the name using our magic coordinates, and by using the I value to increase the Y position, we draw them in a column. Then finally, we want to draw all our important party information. Iterate over the party units array, and hopefully I don't really need to explain the full logic here again. We just draw our name, our hit points, our mana points, which we stored in each unit instance when we created them. Also, if it is a character's turn, we draw our name in yellow if our hit points or MP are below a certain arbitrary value, or if they're 0, we can draw the text in orange or red, all just more of what we've been doing already. If we run that and go into a fight, hopefully we see everything we expect. We see a bunch of units, the unit with the current turn is highlighted, we see our hit points and magic points and their upper limits. As you can see, Questy here has lower than half HP, so it's in orange. And we can pop over to our data script just to confirm all these numbers are what we expected to see. That's going to be it for now. I know it's quite a lot just to get the stuff drawing, and we actually haven't done any gameplay yet other than starting a fight, but I promise it'll get going soon. Hopefully this and the last episode have been a solid lesson in working with arrays, looping over them, and drawing things in sequential positions. It's a big part of creating a system like this, so a good thing to have practice at doing. Also, these videos are taking a long time to make, as you may have noticed. The approach I take and style of the videos might change as this series continues, otherwise it's just never going to get finished, but we'll see how we get on. Thank you all very much for watching, thank you for my patrons for supporting this, and I'll catch you all next time.